Concrete pastures.
That's green, that's right.
Hello, family. Welcome back to Concrete Pastures. I am Nancy Sisi. Oh my God, I am so excited. Thank you so much for tuning in. We don't take this for granted. If you're just watching us, you've been watching us for a while. It's been 2 years now that we've been up. If you're just watching us and you haven't subscribed and you're not following us on any of our platforms, please do so before you finish this video or before you even start listening to this conversation. Our conversation today, oh my God, it's going to be epic. For those of us that are on spiritual journeys, this is for you. It's historical conversation that we're going to talk about. Our guest today is an artist, an author, and he's also known for his legendary photography with the New York Times. With his camera, Mr. Chester Higgins wrestles with issues of memory, place, and identity. He sees his life as a narrative and his photography as its expression. His art gives visual voice to his personal and collective memories. It is inside ordinary moments where he finds windows into larger meaning. Light, perspective, and points in time are the pivotal elements he uses to reveal a interior presence within its subjects as he searches for what he identifies as the signature of the spirit. The work of Chester Higgins challenges us to see the full breadth of our humanity. Through his portraits and studies, traditional ceremonies and the monuments and the ruins of ancient civilization, viewers gain a rare insight into culture, behavior, and a window of another place in time. Welcome, sir. How are you?
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm so honored to be here. Thank you very much.
The honor is all mine. And seeing you this morning, guys, I had to see him this morning. We both live in Brooklyn. It's such an honor. Oh my God, I'm excited. I like to start from the beginning. I've read a little bit of the Echo of the Spirit. Wow. And I've dived into Sacred Nile a little bit. But before we get into our stories, I would like to know how it all began in terms of what got you on this path of spirituality, and also how was your growing up? You are from the US of A, but you've traveled all over the world, especially Africa.
Yes. Well, what got me on this path of spirituality, I didn't realize it at the moment, but at 9 years old, I had a near-death experience. And in that experience, I was levitating, and my parents and grandparents were getting smaller. And my mother, she kept rubbing my hands furiously, and it must have worked because I came back, and they came to my bedside because in the middle of the night I screamed, and I screamed because something woke me up. It was not the sound in the air, but it was something in my head. And I opened my eyes and I saw this big white circle on the wall across from me, from my bed. And in the middle of that circle opened up, and it was a black man who was standing like in a meditative position with wearing what looks like toga or cloth. And gradually he lifted his hands and he opened his eyes, and I felt crackle, but I didn't feel it was ominous. I didn't really know. I'm 9 years old. I don't know if this is the reality here in this place, you know. How do I know? And then, but then it started moving towards me, and it said that he came for me. And I didn't like that. I didn't like the sound of that. I didn't know much about spirituality or religion, but with the little that I know from my parents forcing me to go to church all the time, is that there was this angel of death. And I screamed because that moment I was frightened of the unknown, and I was slightly offended. I was slightly offended or pissed off because I thought, hey, I'm 9 years old. I just got here. Why do I have to die? So
No, it's true. I agree with you. I
all
do
that
this too.
all that came off. So then so the adults rushed up in my room, pulled the light, there was a chain light hanging from the ceiling, pulled the light on. And at that moment, even this apparition of light and this man went away into the wall. And after they were at my side and my knees trying to calm me down. And that's where I experienced this levitation, that they begin to get smaller. And as they begin to get smaller, something else happened. It's like a door or a window open over to the side that I glimpsed where there was all this parallel life going on. I guess it's like being on a cantilevered, mostly highway. It was not static, but it was some sort of a spiritual noise. But it let me know that, wow, that it sort of revealed to me that there was something behind the cloak of reality. That what we see and that really attracts us and commands our attention is in itself could be real, but there is something else that's real behind that.
Yes.
And for me, as a 9-year-old, I really could not put that in words. What I just told you, I just, I on some level I understood it, and it caused me to look at life from then on quite differently, because it caused me to be displaced, for lack of a better word. I mean, I knew I was here with you guys, but I also knew there was something else that was surrounding all of us. So when I look at things, I began to see a two-ness rather than a oneness. And but for everybody, for most people, those two-ness collapse into what we call the oneness.
Yes.
But my experience separated it. And I then became a minister because my grandfather thought this must be a call
Baptist
to the
Church,
ministry.
right?
And because it was an apparition with the spirit, and it was, as people say, it was a private call. It wasn't a party call. And so the next day he put a Bible in my hand, and I started reading. I never was interested before. And I just, and the Bible started coming alive in my hands, and I sort of took to the Bible away, I guess, fish to water. And I continued this until I left for college. And then at college, I walked away from it for a few reasons. One, my grandfather, the hero of my
away.
life, passed away.
Sorry
And
about that.
other men in the church really never measured up to his sense of ethics and dignity. And I became disillusioned with how people of the church are very selective about what they decide is for them, and the hypocrisy of it all. So I walked away, and then when I went to college, I didn't. And another reason is that as a child minister, people treated me as an adult. Which meant that my relationships deepened and broadened with older people. Even though I still had relationships with my peers, it changed. I mean, my peer group was not the group that no longer did they expect me to hang out and curse with them and do all kinds of mischief. But I didn't learn until, maybe 15 years after college from therapy that one of the things that I had unconsciously had problems with is that because of the ministry, I missed out on my teenagehood. I missed out on a lot of the things that, kids grow up doing, because I had been snatched out of this young experience to a much older experience, which I felt comfortable at the time. I didn't have problems with it. And it wasn't until I grew older that I felt that, and it's not something I can replace, but I became to realize why I walked away, because I wanted to be treated as a normal person. I didn't want to no longer to be given this, this vaulted sort of position of respect and whatever that comes along with being a man of the cloth.
Yeah.
I also, people don't show themselves completely if you're a man of the cloth, and I wanted to be able to experience it and see it all, because I was also seeing it with this two-ness, and to see and appreciate and accept. I mean, I was not there trying to tell people what they should be doing. I was never there to judge people, but I had this gift that had been given to me that allowed me to see both sides of things and to see that, appreciate that we're all creatures of the great creator, and we're all trying to do our best getting through here. Some people, we all hit snags, and we all handle those snags different people handle those snags differently. Life is, no matter what you do, we have our ups and downs, and those I've learned are just part of seasoning. Some people like run into salt, some people run into peppers, but it's a seasoning process. It doesn't, who we are and what we experience today does not mean that we'll be that same person next week, next month, or next year.
1000%.
But how those experiences season us determine what we walk away from it with, and how, and it helps inform our character, which to some people can be quite laborious, but and to some people they throw away at the wind. But life is like that, and so that's how I came to see things in a spiritual way. Now, it didn't really strike me that I was doing anything that was unique until I started photography. And I started photography not really because I wanted to be a photographer, but I come from a little country town, a small town in Alabama, Southeast Alabama, of 800 people, a farming town.
Yeah.
A farm, peanuts, cotton, sugarcane, simple, basic stuff. My mother was a school teacher. My father ran a dry cleaners. And in the summertime, I had the luxury of not having to work. But I found out very quickly in the first summer that meant I had no friends to play with either. And all my friends happened to be from poor families. They were not professionals. And so I told my mother I want to go work with my friends. And she said, okay, you can keep your money and buy your fall clothes, school clothes. So that was it's a good bargain. So that's what I did. But the people who I loved most in my hometown were the sisters and brothers of my grandmother. And sometimes my mother would use these, there were, I think, 15 children from that litter. My mother was sometime, when she had professional meetings at night, she would leave me overnight with my great aunt Shil, who was a midwife, or in the daytime with her brother, my great uncle, March 4th. So these people I grew up to love, actually, I'm embarrassed to say, but I acted out that way. I look back at it. But then I grew up to love more than my mother and my father, whom they loved. And so at school, my major was business management. And one day I came up with this idea because I was a business manager for the newspaper, and we had a new editor who was quite ambitious. We had a paper that was 8 pages that the administration gave us a budget for, but my editor wanted 12 pages. So to cover the gap, they looked to me to find ways to make more ad revenue. So I thought maybe we could convince the local business people to run an ad that had a photograph in it, which means that ad was bigger, which means they have to pay more. And I hired this man to go photograph it, who worked for the university. I went to his house on deadline because he hadn't produced the pictures. And he said, okay, I got them, but I have to process the film. So I had to wait at his house for him to process his film and then make the prints. But while there, I noticed that behind a cloak, he had these old photographs, very dignified photographs of farmers. I found out they were from the Depression era. And I said, well, tell me about these pictures. He said, well, I live on a street where on the Saturdays, farmers come into town for market. And every now and then I see someone that's especially a special character, he called it. And I'll run out to them and I'll beg them to come back into my studio and let me make a picture. And he said, well, these people don't have that sense of ego. So when I talk about making a picture, they want to say, well, leave me alone. And he said, but then I offered them money. And then they realized, okay, this fool wants to pay me to make a picture. That means I just have more money in the market that I didn't know I was going to have.
Yeah.
He made these pictures for himself, and they were great. But what it made me think about was my great relatives, my great aunts and uncles, because photography was an expensive thing. Every year, because my mother's a school teacher, she has a new picture, and her friends. But Black people could not go to a white photographer's studio to have their picture made. That's one thing. But the driving thing for me was that I came up from an environment where I knew, having lived with them, that they only had two things on their walls. They had a farmer's almanac calendar, which is important if you're a farmer, and they had a picture of Jesus Christ. That picture everybody had of him in prayer in the Garden of Gethsemane.
No.
Wow. So my thought was, having seen these pictures of Mr. Polk, that it showed the agency of the people. And I said, wow, I want to make pictures of my great aunts and uncles because I want to see their face when I make a print and frame it and put it on their wall, when they will see that they are worth being on their own wall, when they have the same agency as the other two things there. So it took me 1.5 years to learn how to be a photographer, how to be good enough to go and to make those pictures. But that's why I became a photographer.
So you were self-taught?
Well, no, I was taught by this older man.
Okay.
I was maybe there's another word for it. I was self-propelled because it wasn't about making money.
Yeah.
It was about making my great uncle and my great aunt see themselves in a position of worth, that I felt that they were worthy, but there was nothing that echoed that worth back to them inside their house other than things that they own. I mean, other people thought they were worthy. My great aunt, who was a midwife, I used to sit at her house, and when a group of women passed by, they would all stop in front of her house, turn to her house, and bow. And I was like, what is this about? And I found out later that that's because she was a midwife and she had delivered most of everybody's children, including the mothers. So they had a sense of worth that was echoed to them. But I realized that the photograph was just could be my offering to their sense, to their worthiness coming from me. And so forgive me for being so proud or brash enough to think that my photograph would matter to them, but it did.
I think you've just said what there's a saying, I think you also know about it, that the picture speaks 1,000 words. So you've just defined what that is, because we see a lot when we look at the picture, and whether it's sadness, happiness, and in your case, you want to showcase worthiness of your aunts and uncles and probably the community as well. And through your pictures that you've been able to give, there's a story to tell behind every picture. So really, really great. Amazing.
I'll take that for, thank you for the analogy of 1,000 words. I agree with that. But then I found out something else that made me political with my photography. At Tuskegee, we used to, as students, we had problems with Southern racist politicians. And we will sometimes go and picket these politicians. And one of the ones that I went to was for a man named George Wallace, who was a governor. And we went over to picket. And then we came back the next day. It struck me when I looked at the newspaper and the pictures of us, it did not show us as American citizens petitioning the government. The photographs showed us rather as potential thugs, arsonists, and rapists. And that taught me a very important lesson. That yes, a photograph may not, what does he say? May say 1,000 words, and it may not, it may not lie. But I learned that it also does not lie about the photographer who made it.
Yes.
If the photographer who made it hates you, everything they do is going to show a contempt and hate. If the photographer who made it is someone who loves you, understands you, embrace you, then you're going to get that kind of photograph. Because it's an extension in the mind, whatever's in our mind comes out. But that's a very simple thing I understood. I understood that made me then decide to use the photograph to capture the worthiness of our people, period, because it convinced me that outsiders could not see our worth. Outsiders had a conflict with our worth because of racism, because of all kinds of issues, and their own self-hate. And people, and Black people who self-hate can't make a good picture of another Black person either.
No,
so
you cannot give what you don't have.
You cannot.
Yeah.
So it told me that there was a vast area here that needs to be covered. And I just sort of took it upon myself to move from my relatives to our family, our extended family, my neighbors, people in other states, and cousins in other states, theoretically, and traveling to Africa. I consider all of Africans my cousins there as well.
Wow. I'm going all over my brain on which question to ask, but I'll start on here. Could you explain to us what, I guess, in more depth as to what you mean with the signature of spirit, on how you actively search for it in your work?
Signature of the spirit. See, because of that near-death experience, I understood that everything, that the spirit, there's two things. The spirit is in charge, and we exist at the pleasure of the spirit. Now, our egos tell us a whole lot of other stuff, but our egos did not make us be born here. And our ego will not make us have the final marriage with eternity, which is death. It's the spirit. So the spirit gave you the marriage of being in a particular time and place that's limited, that's time limited, and it will allow you to go through it, and it will feed you what you need. It will give you, your will requires certain things. It requires a certain kind of a support. I mean, we as humans have a very long, not teething period, but we have a very long period where we have to be taken care of. As a baby, what have you, else, we'll run afoul. So the spirit gives us things, gives us air, gives us light, gives us water, gives us ground, it gives us food. The spirit does this. The spirit behind it we can't see. Yes, the plant comes up and we see it atop the soil, but what we don't see is the equal distribution of a root system underneath that works in the dark, that must go through the dirt to find the nutrients to make the top that's in the light appear. It's the spirit. So I'm saying that because of my near-death experience, I realized that opening taught me that there is a whole lot more going on than what we see. In fact, so when I go and I photograph, to me, what is obvious is a starting point. But most people stop at the starting point. But the starting point of what is obvious is for me then to work down the layers. And actually I've discovered for myself that the way to really see this this thing that's happening is to track and look at the ceremony of a moment and track the moment as it begins to turn, because each moment turns into another moment, turns into another moment. And I'm interested not in what this looks like, but what this looks like. It's almost like if you were in a gale, a wind of a storm. You know, if you face the storm, you can blow over quickly. But if you turn to the side, then the storm wind, the force of the wind goes past you. You're able to withstand it. That's why there's this expression about, you know, if a tree doesn't bend, it will break. And it's the force of the spirit that comes at you. So I'm always trying to be in touch with the spirit of things. I see what is obvious, but what is obvious is not what I focus through it, not on it. I guess that's it. I mean, I move in situations where I'm half there.
Yeah.
Because I'm not really anchored in the moment. I'm more anchored in the flow, the passing of the moment, if that makes any sense to you.
No, it does. It does. For me, I mean, I've just started being on this journey of understanding what the spiritual realm is. And I know that life starts from there. Whatever we think about, when things become to be, it starts from the spiritual realm. So, for anybody who doesn't know, please just read the books. The books
Okay.
are here, and also study your Bible.
And spirituality is
Yeah.
is a personal experience that
It
each of us have
definitely
with the
is.
universe.
Yeah.
Religion is a taught experience,
Yeah.
but spirituality is what is the foundation of it all.
1,000%. I agree. I agree with that. You've traveled um through Africa, specifically Ghana, Somalia, Egypt. Uh, correct me if I'm wrong.
Well,
It's-
yes, and I also, well, my first travel was in 71 to Senegal.
Yes,
Then I lived in the summer of 72, 73
in
in
Ghana.
Ghana. And then I traveled to Nigeria, Cameroon, and Namibia on the east side, on the west side, and then Mali, Niger, and then on the east coast, Egypt, Sudan, Ethiopia, Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda. I
You
think
just
that's
skipped
it.
my country. You just like, let me just skip
I
Zambia.
skipped Zambia. Oh my God.
You just
Yeah,
skipped
you had
Zambia.
a president there. Well, Kenneth
Kaunda.
Kawanda.
Kaunda,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, Kawanda.
That's
Yeah,
what
yeah. I saw
that's
him.
who everybody knows. Anytime you talk about
Yes,
Zambia, they'll talk about Kenneth Kaunda, and if
KK.
we talk about football, KK, yes. If we talk about football, which is soccer, everybody will talk
Yeah, yeah,
about Kalusha Bwalia, everybody.
yeah. And you guys wasn't an air accident that you guys lost your
Yes,
soccer team?
yes, yes. That was from I believe from Gabon, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
very young when that happened. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Everybody, it was sad. Oh my God, it was so sad. I was so
yeah.
young, but I could feel, like, you could feel the emotion in the whole
Yep,
country.
yep.
Everybody was glued to the radios at the time. Not everybody could afford TV, but for a
Right,
lot of us that lived in rural areas, it was
right.
you were glued, and you could hear
Yeah,
the adults talk about it, how sad it
yeah,
was. It was the whole team.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Also,
separation by death is so final, and it tears our hearts apart.
definitely. So you've had opportunities to live in these countries and visit. What has been your experience like? I know you were doing research for a lot of that time, but what was your experience in Africa and really diving into what we're about to talk about here?
Well, I went to Africa because I wanted to, and I felt a sense of, growing up in America as a African person,
Mm,
you learn very early as minorities in a white majority culture that we are not appreciated or wanted. So the question that really causes a bifurcation in our consciousness is, where do we belong? If we don't belong here, where do we belong? And if we don't belong here with the land that our forefathers have grown up in, then where is home? And why can't I feel safe here? I think that's something that sort of nags at the consciousness of a Black person who lives here. And Black people who live here are very confused by this because they don't realize that that they're stuck in a white projective television show. They somehow want to be Americans because that's the tradition they've grown out of, in spite of the fact that Americans don't want them to be Americans. And the Americans white Americans have convinced them to hate themselves. So they grow up then denying the possibility that they could be African. They somehow have this delusional illusion that, maybe they just like, vapor just, happen to, just spawn here, which is not the case. It speaks to the sadness of the mind being marooned in a reality that is unhealthy for it, but is not able to call out the agent of unhealthiness. Now, I say, to my African friends who come here, whether they come from any countries that I've been to, when they get here and we talk, and I after a few weeks, I look at them and I say, well, I bet you didn't know you were Black until you got here, did you?
Yes.
And they look like, wow.
I had no idea until I got here. And somebody reminded me, like, this is your color.
Right.
No, that is true. That is true.
So especially all my ambassador friends and stuff, I love having that conversation with them. Because, all of these people are accomplished people in their societies. And they come here and then they get reduced to the lowest common denominator, which is what racism does. So the fight is always against, in my mind, pushing back against that image of the lowest common denominator. Yes, Black people can have fun just like, poor white people can. But does that mean that you only see pictures of poor white people? No. So don't just show me and castigate me about behavior that lower class values that Black people have and try to paint that as my normality when it is not. So in my photography, I try to advance the cause of what I say in the image of the Black person, of the African person, in white people or anybody, because across the globe it's okay to hate Black folks. What's absent in all of them are three issues. They don't see our decency. They refuse to see our dignity, and they refuse to see and appreciate our moral character. So those are the three things that I try to make sure that are in my photographs. And the Spirit taught me, gave me good teachers to learn how to be an effective image maker. And they gave me opportunities that can make a difference. They gave me the opportunities to publish books. This is my 8th book now. Yeah, so I reach one group of people that way. It gave me the opportunity, though, to be a staff photographer at a newspaper, but not just any newspaper, the newspaper that decision makers pay attention to every day. Yeah. And that was the New York Times. So I knew that I could not eliminate the racist images that white photographers are producing, but I could at least add to the menu a different kind of image that people are used to seeing about our people. So that gradually, over time, this little drop of the water along the way has an overall effect. So that's what I did for 38 years, and I retired because I got old and I want to do something else.
You just answered my other question.
So I have these long-term projects, always about, the reconstitution of the decency, dignity, and moral character of our people. When I go to Africa, I go to just hang out and just be and make friends, make relationships. Sometimes I hike. I go in the beginning, and in Ghana, I would just take a trotro, and I would just go village to village. And if it felt like this is a village I should stop at, I'd get off, and I'll stay, find someone I hook up with and become friends with, and just experience the village, live with a family, eat with the family, wash in the cold water bucket baths and stuff, and just simply to be. And I try to set in all of my work. I really don't try to come as a photographer. I try to come as a friend who happens to have a camera, because I don't make
You
pictures
do
all
the
the time.
bucket bath and everything.
Huh?
You do the bucket bath and everything. You just immerse yourself in the village life.
Yeah, I immerse myself. I eat out of the circular, big pan like
Yes.
everybody
Oh,
else.
wow.
And and I drink the palm wine, and I went to cinemas with no roof. Uh,
Yeah.
and drink the coffee and the tea, and I'm just there to be a visiting relative.
I
And
love that. I
I
really love that. Given
and,
guys,
and
just to give a little bit of perspective, I visited him this morning for like few seconds. He lives in the most, one of the posh areas in New York, in Brooklyn. So for him to be down to earth that way, it's really humbling. It's beautiful to see actually that way, that you go to a village and eat with everyone and just be a human being. It's beautiful. It's beautiful to see, because I know village life. I used to live very rural, so I understand it. um but yeah, no, continue please.
I'm a people person, so
Yeah, no, it's beautiful.
So then my first year living in Ghana, from living in the villages, I overheard one day a conversation where some woman told a friend of hers, she says, my somebody, either, some relative, niece or cousin in Europe, saw your picture in a magazine. Oh, it was horrible. You look horrible. Blah, 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 blah. And it made me realize I knew what she was talking about, because outsiders see us in a very pejorative way. They see us as objects, as things, not as people. And they're quick to do something that I identify as sacrificing our humanity on the altars of what we don't have.
Wow.
How could a poor person have dignity and humanity if you're coming as an outsider from a place and you live in a great community? And how could a poor person have dignity?
No.
So that's how the photographers see you. So it made me realize that, okay, I need to send pictures back to people who I've been photographing this summer. And I get back, and it took me 6 months, but I did. But the next year, I came upon a better solution. I came upon the Polaroid. The Polaroid camera had been made smaller, cheaper, and I could take 500 Polaroids with me. So next year, when I went to a village and I get off the Chocho, what's the first thing I'm going to be? Who's coming after me? Children.
Yeah.
I take the Polaroid out and I start making children's pictures. Then the children take those pictures. If they like them, these becomes my bridges of trust, because I'm showing people how I see them. They run back and they show them to their mothers and their parents, their fathers, grandparents. Next thing I know, the parents have sent them for me to come make pictures of them. So now I make pictures of the older generation. I get a chance to explore the village, to learn what all the crooks and turns and stuff. And so the next day, I don't give any more Polaroids. I give all the Polaroids that day. The next day, the kids who didn't get a Polaroid come to me, and I said, "Well, I don't have." Now I have my 35mm camera. I don't have any more of that, And then they're okay. They're okay with it. And then I can start living in the community, and I know people now, so I can go to different people's houses at different times when things are happening. Women are doing their chores, men are doing theirs in the field, whatever. And in the conversation or being with them, if I see a picture, I would then take my camera, make it, and put it back. Now people don't, because people know how I see them.
Yeah.
They know that I come with love, and I don't come with judgment, and they don't have to feel they have to be protective of themselves around me. So then the other images that I make with my 35 millimeter become, the images that I get a chance to keep.
Wow. Wow. I want to get into the sacred now, and
Okay.
I also want to get into the echo of the spirit. The echo of the spirit, just for anybody, I'm going to show it here. For anybody who's listening to us, YouTube will have the picture. I'm showing it. This is the echo of the spirit, which is amazing.
Thank you.
Yes, it
It's
is.
a little girl running after a butterfly.
Oh my God. Um, Listen, I love books that have pictures and I can see what the story is about. There's so much, like we said again, a picture speaks a million words. And even looking at this girl, I had a different imagination looking at this girl.
Okay.
I'm thinking she's playing, it's outside. She reminds me of myself when I was
Yes.
young, because I played almost in the same type of thing in the grass, a
Yeah.
lot of running around,
Yep.
not dressed
Yep.
as
Yep.
well.
Yep.
So it's she brought my childhood to me. And
Good.
somebody also look at this and think of something else for themselves. So for
Right.
me, I can relate to this young girl that's
Great.
on the cover. But this is your journey as a photographer,
Right.
and it's beautiful. It's
Thank you.
beautiful. You took all of these pictures?
Oh, please forgive me. Yes, I don't show other people's pictures.
And I'm like, this is a lot of work. It's many years. I mean, I know that I understand you work for the New York Times, but these are personal,
Yes. Right.
through your own journey
Right.
that you collected and put into a story, which is, I think, is brilliant
Thank you.
that you
Thank you.
did this. So
Thank
what
you.
inspired you to finally do your, I guess, autobiography, I would say,
Memoir.
your
Well,
memoir?
there was this woman who was an editor who approached me and says, because I think at the time I had done maybe let's see, I did Black Woman was first book, Drums of Life on Men. Then some time ago, and then Feeling the Spirit. And yeah, then this woman came to me after I've done 4 books and says, we want to tell your story. So we talked about it, and the book is broken up in 2 portions because the first half is what I call my domestic life in the States, and the second half is my traveling around Africa and across the Atlantic Ocean, the Caribbean, what have you.
Yes, Brazil, Haiti.
Yes.
Mhm.
Because my whole thing that pushed me was, where do I belong? Well, then where I belong is where my people are. So where are my people? And let me go find this kaleidoscope of my people. We in the Western world, we were all dropped off after we were captured into the prison of slavery. We were all dropped off into different prisons along the eastern seaboard of the Americas. So in this instance, I'm trying to touch ground where our people were dropped off, and I'm trying to put all. It's kind of like a mummy that's been decapitated. I'm trying to pull all these pieces back together, looking for the fragments of myself and pulling together so I can find a sense of wholeness. And that's what my work has been about, and that's what this memoir is about.
There's so many people that feel displaced. especially here among our African Americans. Um, and there's a lot now of people traveling back to Africa to go back to different countries, especially like Ghana, Senegal for some, Nigeria, all the different areas where slavery was touched. And it's great that you're actually sharing your own journey. And there's a lot of people I'm positive that are going to relate to your story, and I'll probably find some light in what you went through, and maybe they can find closure for themselves as to, your own journey, because not everybody can afford to travel, but they still feel uh, that they don't belong. There's a lot of people, and I've heard so many stories. And this is why when I was reading a little bit of the book, I was like, wow, there's so many people who feel the way he feels. And that's why the difference is when, for me as an African, living in America now, we don't have that because of I grew up in Africa and I came here. And for you guys, it's very, very different, even though we are the same. Um, hopefully we can continue these conversations.
But we're hard, but it's hard to have a conversation. We are the same. We
Yeah,
have different experiences, but you know, something interesting that's different about both groups.
yeah,
Because you grew up in a Black society,
yeah.
you have a sense of self-esteem.
That's the biggest difference. It's a huge difference. And even when I speak to, I had a conversation with one of my brothers. He speaks on um, Africanism. So he speaks on that, and he's trying to shed light as to why these two communities are not together. We're always either feeling like one is superior than the other. Um, for us, that I don't even like to say for us, because we are all the same people. It feels like people don't want us to be here, especially our fellow African Americans. And then when they go to Africa, we are more welcoming than we feel here. I'm sure you've experienced that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
And they're, I mean, when I go to Ghana, you know, people, I remember the first time people say, welcome home, brother, you know, and they actually mean it. And people, you
Yeah.
know, going to Africa as an African American, I find is very liberating because for the first time, I'm in a majority Black culture where my skin color is not a target.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Now, African Americans have a problem with self-hate that you don't have because you come from a culture that gives you self-esteem.
Gotcha. Okay.
Self-hate then is easy. Self-hate means also that you have a shallow ego, a shallow sense of worth. So any little thing shakes you up. They may be shaken up by the Latinos, you know, or the Italians or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
because you're already in a society where you are feeling that you're at the bottom, and that everything that comes in is going to land on top of you. That's a hard thing to deal with.
Gotcha.
For some people, it's impossible to deal with. The other thing is that you're being an African. For an African American to accept your Africanness means that they have to accept their Africanness. And the biggest boogeyman in the mind of the Black American that was put there by the white man who hates us is that Africa is uncivilized. Africa, you don't want to identify with Africa. So it's a real mental trick bag that not everybody can jump over. It's really meant that we have been put in this psychological box, the psychological warfare, and it lingers very strong. There are pockets in this history, and I mentioned in that book on Echo, in the very end, where people would rather fight you than identify with their Blackness or their Africanness. And I use the story of my grandmother who loved coffee. black coffee. And she would, and as a child, I remember how it would percolate, Maxwell House to the last drop. And she would, when the house was gone, my grandfather's gone, all the adults are gone, she would sit down and have a little peace with her cup of coffee. And one day I'm sitting there with her and I say, Grandma, can I have some of that coffee? No, she didn't want to, she did not want to have her moment messed up.
Yeah.
First of all, my being there, and now my wanting some of her coffee. So she looks at me. She thought she was going to convince me not to pursue this anymore. She looks at me. She said, well, finally, she says, well, you know, coffee will make you black.
Wow.
The unconscious thing, you don't want to be black, do you? You don't want to be African.
Yeah.
So
wow.
I pipe up back and I says, that's okay with me. I enjoy being black. But I knew what she was talking about, that there are Black people who, that's why in this society, you have so much of the intermarriage to lighten the race. That's why you have the beginning of skin lighteners to lighten the race so that the white person will feel less offensive by your presence. It's all about how to make the white person comfortable. You could be uncomfortable, but you have to go through hoops to make them comfortable.
Yeah.
So my declaration to my grandma says, you know, look, hey, I'm happy with being black. I want the coffee. At that point, she then moved her body up, got it from the table, and she went and she gave me my first cup of black coffee, and we slurped black coffee together. And that was a bond.
Yeah.
Because the coffee represented not just her sense of peace, and I want to be a part of that, but she made it represent a sense of emotional comfortability.
Yeah.
With my blackness.
Wow. So what motivated you? I'm sure you've shared it in the bits and pieces in here in the packets of your story as to why you decided to write Secret of the Nile.
Now, Secret Nile comes out in 1972 when I was in Ghana. I heard about the Organization of African
Guys,
Unity.
this is beautiful. Oh my goodness.
Thank you.
I can't get over the pictures in this book.
Thank you.
Get over. I encourage everybody. What I'm looking at, guys, for anybody who's listening, these are the pyramids of Egypt, which I'm yet to go see.
Actually, Egypt has pyramids, but these are the pyramids of their southern neighbor, Sudan.
Sudan.
Sudan has.
Do you know? I was questioning. I'm like, wait, Sudan does have pyramids?
In fact, so you would be surprised to know that not only the Sudanese pyramids as beautiful as you just saw, but Egypt has almost 100 pyramids. Sudan has more than 200. They are, and there's a difference. The Egyptian pyramids, the tallest is 35 stories high.
In Sudan?
No, in Egypt. The Sudanese pyramids, the tallest is about 15 stories. But the Egyptian pyramid, 35 stories, was the tallest thing on the planet until the Eiffel Tower was built. That's the tallest thing on the planet.
That's amazing. Let me just have, before I even answer our question, so The Secret Now is a photo of history book that uncovers the African influence on philosophy, spirituality, and religion before Genesis and slavery. This caught my eyes. This book examines our fundamental history and sheds light on the missing and buried links on our glorious imagination. In our miseducated Black people have been taught everybody's history except their own. This one got me. This one got me. I was like, wow. I mean, there's spirituality in this book. There is religion, and the fact that you say Genesis and slavery, before Genesis and slavery, please explain. Please explain.
Okay. Genesis, the book of Genesis, is a book about creation.
Yes.
Now that we can date the Old Testament to 500 BCE as oral history before it became written. That's good.
Mm.
Now, I take you to a place in this book that predates that. I take you to the tomb walls under the pyramid of King Unas, was a holy man. All the kings were holy. Pharaoh is not an Egyptian term. It's a Hebrew term, but it's not an Egyptian term. But that and other things lead me to believe that the whole Old Testament references to Genesis, to Egypt, never existed. But I'll tell you how. But let me first tell you about why this Genesis story is important. The Genesis story that we read is a copy from the Egyptian. The original of that story has been chiseled on the walls of the temples, most of them destroyed. Thank God, with archaeologists, Egyptologists found 3 tombs that had chiseled on the wall the creation story of the Egyptians.
Mm.
The creation story, but it also has something else. It has what became our moral compass, what we call the 10 Commandments. And it has the story of ascension, that when the body dies, the soul ascends to heaven.
Yes.
And heaven is a particular place among the Egyptian mythology. It is at the far left star of the belt of Orion. And we know that because in the pyramid, there are small little chambers you can't pass through, but that leads, because the Egyptians, more than anything else, were astronomers, that lead to certain parts in the heavens. And by computers, astrophysicists were able to say, okay, if the pyramid was built at this such and such a time, where were these things pointing? And they found out that they were pointing at that particular star in the belt of Orion. The belt of Orion is very important in African Egyptian mythology. So what I'm saying is that the first people, and the difference between writing and oral history, history and folklore is writing. The Egyptians in 2500 BCE, that's about, 5,000 more years than where we are now, the distance from, they were writing about their relationship with the Creator. 2,000 years before, the Hebrews copied what they were saying.
Mm.
And the Hebrews copied it, but they didn't want to act like that they really copied it from them, the Hebrews and the Greeks. So they played with it. They don't have all 42 negative confessions. They only have 10, we call the 10 Commandments. They don't have the names of the Jesus who was killed and decapitated into 14 pieces, Osiris, and whose wife then came with the help of the spirit, took the form of a bird, hovered over a dead body that she had reassembled, took with the help of the spirit, took the seed of the dead man and gave birth. That was the first impossible conception, long before Mary. And then when the child was coming of age, because the mother was now a political, she had been overthrown, so that makes her a fugitive, a fugitive in her own country, had no skills other than working in the market, became a market woman. And because she knew the authorities were looking for a young mother and a baby, she had to hide her baby. So she constructed out of papyrus reeds a little boat to hold the child in while she went to work. That child, whose name was Heru, the Greek called Horus, that we now call Jesus, that first impossible birth, that's how it was taken care of until later on, what we don't say in our Bible, that person becomes a liberator because that person leads a war against the people who overthrew her mother and her father and his father. So if you don't get this by just reading the Bible, you have to cross-check it. If you study Egyptian religion, then you realize, and religion is only spirituality because it's all based on nature. Then you realize that everything in the Bible comes out of African concepts and they were plagiarized. But then the Greek took the people who they plagiarized and they turned around and demonized the very people they plagiarized. Now, we don't know that. We're all willing victims because we don't do the research. We don't know it. We haven't been to Egypt. I only know it because the Spirit took me to Egypt in 73 and it took me to Ethiopia. And I saw both of these things that are not in any of our history books. And I saw things that have been corrupted in the only history book that we have about Egypt, and that is the Bible. Now, I question if the Hebrews ever were in Egypt, but I can understand why they use Egypt as an anchor, because Egypt, there's no other country that existed for 7,000 years in peace that talks about spirituality but Egypt. No other European country has a heritage of sacredness. They don't have sacred caves that are 3,000 years old. They don't have sacred writing. They're 3,000, 5,000 years old. Only we do. But we didn't know that because we had been taught by this Bible that have painted already our people as Ham and our people as mean, that the pharaohs were mean to them and that they made them do extra work. Now I say, well, look, two things. First of all, if you lived in Egypt, Egypt is full of nothing but pyramids. Why don't you mention in your book that there are pyramids? Egypt is full of temples that have a worship going on. Why is it that you don't mention in it that your people didn't see this? And then let's talk about slavery. Egypt was not a slave society. Who brought slavery to Egypt? Nobody. But who was sold into slavery by outsiders and brought into Egypt? The son of Abraham was sold into slavery. Who became Joseph? He was brought in as a merchant. It was not an Egyptian, it was not a slave society. Greek, Rome, all of those Europe northerners were slave societies, but you don't get there by reading only one book. I say that, look, what Sacred Nile, one thing it does, it shows that, hey, in one way, everything is alike. Our belief in the ultimate Holy Spirit is the same, but there are variations. And I say to people that, look, the Holy Bible, the Torah, all of those things rest upon the shoulders of the African conceptual thought of the ancient Egyptians. You cannot come up with any concept, spirit, purification, divine, all those things are written in hieroglyphs on stone walls. They got translated. And when the Greeks tried to demonize our people by saying we worship a lot of gods, when in fact the Egyptians worship one God, and that God, you may recognize his name, is Amen. Now, how did that happen? Not only that, but the Egyptians believed in nature, and they believed that the creator in nature was a woman, a Black woman, because she had to be Black because she was the night sky. And they believed, and they had left a drawing that sums up this concept. Do you know yoga?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know the downward dog position of yoga?
Yes.
Okay. The Egyptians left behind a painting in the tombs, in some of the tombs. And what you have is a nighttime sky, and you have this body of a long, lean Black woman leaning over the planet that is round, not flat. What's interesting about this is how she leans. It's a downward dog. Her arms are in the west and her feet are in the east. So she's not leaning on the magnetic pole. She's leaning on the solar pole where the sun rises and sets, the solar pole. Why? Her arm on the west becomes like a runway. So when the tired sun sets, it then uses her arms to run up and enter her mouth where she swallows it. Why? Because it's tired. It needs to be regenerated. The next 12 hours, it travels through her body, getting recharged. But because she wears a dress with holes in it, the light of the sun going through recharging, twinkles out, and you see stars. And in the morning, because her feet are on the east, where the sun rises, she gives birth to the sun. But she gives birth to the sun with the help of an energy, a catalytic force that is invisible, that the Egyptians, ancient Africans call Amen. And any word that you say in theology, whether you are, and they all say the same word, nobody translates it. Whether you're speaking in the Torah, speaking in the Bible, speaking in the Quran, they all say amen. There is no more powerful word that you can say in any kind of prayer than amen.
Okay.
Once you say anything else and you finally say amen, you know it's finished. Because amen is the word that our forefathers, before we knew anything, had discovered and had developed a relationship with. So now when the European, the Northerners, tried to realize that religion could be used as crowd control and pacification, they've made a lot of changes. In fact, you got 52 passages that approve slavery, but they couldn't take sun out. Every day you worship the sun. So we get Sunday, and they couldn't take amen out. So they sprinkled it. But since we don't know where the original is, we are moved by it, but we don't know why. Because it's in our ancestors realized it was in our DNA. It's in our connection, our personal connection with the universe. Our people were spiritual scientists.
Wow. No, it's interesting. It's very interesting. When I was looking and just listening to what you were saying, even on one interview that you did, just a little piece, the sun day that you just mentioned, it's the second time I'm hearing it, not from you, but from another show that I was watching at.
It could be.
How
The
it came
won't
from
change.
Egypt. Yeah, no, and how it came from Egypt as well as the sun day, and they were going
Yes.
through all of the days of the week, actually. But Sunday, you mentioning it, it just gave me that moment as to, oh, wow. How long did it take to do all of this research?
Well, this is 50 years of research, 5 decades.
Oh,
I did not know how long it was going to take when I set off on this path. And I did not know, yes, the Temple of Luxor. You've probably heard of King Tut. That's his grandfather's temple to the sun.
and we have a Nubia here.
Another one is a wall on the temple in Nubia, and you see the etchings of the queen. The biggest woman, the biggest figure on the wall is a queen. And the queens, and you had more queens in Nubia than you had in Egypt, and they had a special name. They were called Kandakis. So you may remember in the biblical story, they talked about Candace, Queen of Sheba. Well, it shows here you had a problem with translation. It's corruption. Instead of Candace, Kandace, they said Kandaki. They did the C, but it's from the word Kandaki.
So to me, it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, you were on a spiritual journey. There's a lot of people that are still on a spiritual journey. I'm one of them. What do you see is a common theme in all of these different religions? I mean, we didn't even discuss the rituals. You have pictures of rituals. You showcase your work in different ways. What do you see is a common theme, I guess, in spirituality or seeing through the spirit itself?
I think the spiritual people are fighting the whole issue of being controlled. See, religion has many different benefits to it as social communication, what have you, celebratory events. But fundamentally, religion is about walling some people in and walling some people out. That's how we get all these wars, religious wars. Somebody, you're not allowed in my space, or I'm not allowed in your space. Very quickly, these walls go up. And I think spiritualist people, I'm one of them, who feel I don't want to be walled in or out from anything that the Creator the Spirit has created. I don't want to be part of a God that's bigoted, who says some people are worthy and some people are not. Obviously, the Spirit has decided we are worthy. That's how we got here.
Mm.
The Spirit has decided that we all have access to oxygen to breathe. The Spirit has decided we all have access to water to drink. So I don't feel the need. I feel confined if I'm just in a religion. A religion has its purposes, but um, I think for spiritual people, it's just too confining because you're saying you can only be in my neighborhood and nobody else's, and that's not realistic. You can, and then something unrealistic, you'd have to then go through all kinds of hoops to make it a reality. And you're always making this fantasy, you're always propping up this fantasy that you feel you need to make a reality because it feeds into, because you've invested a lot in how you think it says about you. So I think spiritual people are just trying to deal with the fact that you can have a spiritual relationship, each of us do, with the universe, whether we're aware of it or not. We each have a relationship with the universe. But religion is about controlling, and it's something you have to know. You have to be taught. Whereas spirituality, you don't have to be taught it. You just have to be. We all know what's right and wrong before we are taught it in a church issue. We all know, and that's fundamental. That's what moral compass is all about. And we all know that when the sun goes down, the body is tired. It's time to go to sleep. And when it comes up, the body's refreshed, just like Newt. The body's refreshed, and it's time to live your day in the sun. And when it gets to night, you need a recharge, and you go to sleep. That's all the clock of nature, the clock of spirituality that we're all on. So when the humans create these other things, because in the ancient Egyptian, if you look at the glyphs, everything is in nature. Everything is about the appreciation of nature. It's about the understanding that you will love me until I die. The sun will love me until I die. The air will love me until I die. The water will love me till I die. So I am only saying, I'm reflecting that. I will love you until I die. I will love nature until I die. I will love the sun until I die. I will love water and protect it until I die. I will love air and protect it until I die. So that's not that I got to worship in my neighborhood that doesn't include your neighborhood, because spirituality, the universe, includes us all. So the fundamental differences in religion and spirituality is that there are walls. Neighborhood goes up, as opposed to understanding that we're all part of the same thing.
Listen, I can talk to you forever, but I want to show you this. Children of the River. Again, guys, I'm showing through the book of Sacred Nile. So it's a beautiful book. You need to get it. I encourage anyone. The pictures are endless and it tells a story. You will learn a lot. And whatever we are talking about, we're just touching literally barely the surface. The book will explain a lot more. So explain to us.
Oh, here
Children
you
of the River.
okay. Well, where the water flows is where life grows. And because you cannot have life without water.
Yep.
You can have air and all those other, but if you don't have water, there's no life. So we're all children of a river. We're children of a spiritual river, children of a physical river. The Egyptians believed also that the Nile, the river that connects them, is replicated in the heavens as the Milky Way. That's why and there's two pictures in the beginning, one in the beginning and one at the end of the Milky Way, because the Egyptians felt that most of the information, they were a very scientific society as astronomers, and they felt that most of the information that the universe was teaching them was hidden in the arrangement of the stars. So they gave us the first cosmology. They gave us the first astrological charts.
Mm.
In Paris, in the Museum of Louvre, you'll find the astrological chart is taken from the museum, the Temple of Time in Egypt. So we're all are rivers of this endless cosmic river that is flowing and taking us. It becomes our superhighway to connect to each other as well as to support us. In the book, I show the river, the transit of the river, because the Nile is a very strange river. It's the only river that goes north in the world. Why? Everybody, the Greeks thought maybe it came off of a snow-capped mountain like Kilimanjaro, but it didn't.
No.
What it does, it comes out of a 6,000 elevation in Ethiopia, in Lake Tana, that falls down the Nile Trench. And I make a map for this. I make all of this stuff so that you can see the evidence. The reader who look at this book, you
Yep.
see the evidence of our divinity, you see the evidence of our history, you see where the environment that this is coming from. So the river drops up for 4,000 miles out of Ethiopia down to the Mediterranean. And along that river, it becomes a major highway for migration. The people follow it, and they bring out of Ethiopia, their belief system in nature, in the sky. And it comes and settles into Ethiopia, into Egypt. Then 8,000 years later, because of wars, the religious thought is changed to patriarchy. That's when the patriarchs made what we have as the Torah and the Bible, and the first thing they did is they disenfranchised the divinity of the woman. You are no longer a sacred being. You are merely a vessel. You're no longer the sacredness of Nut giving creation. They get very fanciful and say that you, who is the only animal that can give birth, that you got your birth from a man. So it becomes very illogical. All the models who are the heroes become very logical. Abraham is not somebody you would support if you knew him in our life. It forces people to become delusional because it corrupts nature in the name of making man preeminent. It even kills nature and says that man is now in control of it. Man can't create air. Man can't make water. Man can't make mountains. But all of it's a corruption of reality and a corruption of the soul. But you would never have a reason to think about this if you didn't know what came before and how it was prepared. And that's why I try to present this information, the physical evidence, so that you're not listening to me talk about something. You're not just reading something. I'm showing you the evidence. The evidence means also it exists today. You can take that picture and you can say, I'm going to Egypt and I want to go see this because I've told you where it is. And I've told you what the environment of what it comes out of in terms of thinking, and you can see for yourself. And you can say, yes, whoever you're talking to, take your friends with you. So all of you can see. Look, our people were great. Our people did the greatest thing that even humanity now cannot escape, even though they corrupted it. But we need to know that the Northerners are not sacred people. We are sacred people, and the evidence is still there, and we can recover. We can recover once we know better. We can do better. We can recover from the corruption that we have been put upon us.
I see. Do you believe in the heavens?
Do I believe we exist in heavens?
Yes.
The planet exists in the heaven. The planet floats in heaven. Yes, but now if you ask me, heaven is another construction here. Heaven is to imply that there's a place better than here without any strife. Now, I tell you one thing, if a lot of these people who mouths are full of scripture and whose hearts are full of hate are in heaven, I don't want to go there. If they think they're going to heaven and the heaven is made for them, I don't want to go there. Heaven is, the Spirit has put us in a heaven. Now, we may make a hellishness of it, but we have been put in a heaven. We exist, we float in heaven. The planet floats in heaven. Every planet floats in heaven, in the body, and the universe is the body of God. And the body of God is Nut. We all float within her.
Who is your audience for these books? The Echo of the Spirit and also the big topic, Sacred Now.
I like to think that my audience is my people. That's who I do it. That's who I do my work for. I try to think that if I learn something, if I grow from something, that I think would make me, that if it made me better, I like to think that other people of my kind, our kind, could learn and grow from it too. I'm only unearthing information about us that's been hidden and banned. So we are the community that stand to gain the most from the knowledge. Our oppressors don't gain from this knowledge. This is not their thing. Our oppressors are not going to show you a book of beautiful color pictures of Black folks and Black things that rivals the top of their Greek culture, whatever. They're not going to do that. They come to Africa to show you how bad off you are, how much you need them, how easy you can be made a fool of to exploit. They're not going to show you a sense of agency where you can, because you've done it before. You can build a society along science and spirituality that you can control the world again. See, the European had a problem when he started enslavement. First of all, the only reason we have enslavement is because Europeans fight with each other all the time. It wasn't until the 1400s that the popes issued what's called the Document of Discovery. It says, look, okay, boys, stop fighting with each other. I'm going to do this. I'm going to say, give you a spiritual cover. You go out into the world, and every place you land, if they don't believe in Christ, you can conquer them. It's called the Document of Discovery. Look it up. Google it, please. Document of Discovery. It's a papal paper of the 1400s. That's what caused Europeans to leave Europe and stop fighting among themselves, and then go out into the world and fight everybody else. Document of Discovery, papal, issued by the Pope. Gave them. That's how the Crusades got started. The Document of Discovery saying, I don't care how you do it. You can kill any way you want. You can slaughter, whatever. I'm going to forgive you because this is your new mission. That was meant to keep the white folks from fighting each other, because their history was always fight, fight, fight. Look at Rome. Every week, there's a new war. Look at Greece. Look at the history. Every month, that's a new war. All the Northerners know how to do in their DNA is to self-destruct. So the people who everybody paid attention to did a very brilliant thing for them. It said, look over there, not at each other. Look over there. So and then in the context of that, how do we then make a Bible? Take the Bible with you. That the Bible became the missionary Bible. And in England, that Bible came, King James published it, and don't take my word for it. That Bible became what's called the Slave Bible. Look it up, Google it. Where is the Slave Bible? You'll find it. You're coming out of King James, the King James edition, because that Bible it was meant to pacify the African people. They knew they were in touch with a spirituality they didn't understand, but the Greeks helped them form a structure that allowed that spirituality to become a political tool. So in this Bible, Slave Bible, there are 52 references to saying slavery is okay. Do not transgress your slave master. Do not go against the one who's oppressing you. Now, what kind of Bible is this? It's supposed to be saving you and telling you and delivering you to the hellish of anything. And then, in colonial times and slavery time, the oppressor didn't give us the best food, didn't give us any income, didn't give us the best clothes. Now, why do we think naively that it would give us the best religion that they came into, but they had to corrupt it to give it to us? we don't think these things through. There's no reason for us to think these things through because this is how it was been done. But I'm trying to show perspective. I'm just trying to show perspective that if you consider this and this, how does that make you now question this? Because you should question. We're not going to get it by being accepting. Faith, I'm not into believing as much as I'm into knowing. We have to do both. We cannot just believe. We also must know. So I'm trying to give us the perspective to balance that equation out.
Got it. Wow. You were recently inducted in the Hall of Fame. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh my God.
I didn't know
How
such
do
a
you
thing.
feel? How do you feel? How was that experience for your work?
Well, you know, I feel good to be inducted into the International Photographers Hall of Fame because it says, it recognizes the hard work that I put into being a very powerful image maker. I've dedicated my life to being a very powerful image maker. And it recognizes the fact that I did it without only photographing my people. I didn't try to be like them.
Yeah.
To photograph their people. In fact, my position is that you don't need me to photograph your people because you have too many people who are doing a better job than I could ever do. Stick with that. But what you don't do and what needs to be done is equal concentration, equal excellence on my people. And that's what I was inducted into the Hall of Fame for. That I've consistently, 5.5 decades, produced strong images that shows that for the love of people of African descent.
Beautiful. Beautiful. What advice would you give for anybody who feels displaced, aside from what you've shared in the Echo of the Spirit and Sacred Nile? What advice?
Is it possible to take a pause?
Yes.
Okay, just a second.
So, what advice do you have for anybody who feels displaced, aside from what you've been able to put in this book, Echo of the Spirit and also Sacred Nile? What advice would you give somebody who feels displaced and they feel like they need to go back to Africa and, find themselves in a way?
Well, I encourage them. I tell people that, I go to Africa every year since 71 because I need that reconnection. And frankly, I find it cheaper than therapy. It's a better experience. I say we all need to, we all need to connect with like-minded people that reinforces our positive sense of self. You cannot get enough of that. And I say that to African immigrants who are here, who family left behind. And I know that some people feel when they leave Africa and they go and immigrate that, well, I can't go back home unless I got a lot of money. I've made it big, like it is in the TV screens. Don't let that bother you. What's more important is that your parents can lay their eyes on you again. What's more important is that you can lay your eyes on them and you can touch them while they're living.
Yeah.
Everybody, we all upwardly mobile ambition. It's okay. But just because you don't achieve it doesn't mean that you're a failure. It means that you still have work to do and you don't know what tomorrow and next year will bring. But take advantage of the opportunity to go and even talk to the people who will kid you. Oh, you came back, but you didn't come back with this. You said no, because what is richer than all of that is seeing you guys again, or seeing you girls again. I'm gonna go back. I may not come back for that. I may not. That's my wish.
Yeah.
But my wish does not make the world go around. But being here, loving you, and being with you does make the world go around. That's what I say.
Yeah, that's beautiful. How can people grab these amazing books? Because this was so informative and we want to continue the conversation with you.
Okay.
How can people get a handle of these amazing books?
Well, you can get The Echo of the Spirit is on Amazon.com. Both the books on Amazon.com. But we also sell only Sacred Now has its own website that's sacrednow.com. So please, we'll love to fill your order. Sacrednow.com, we're selling, I think, for $35. Same as on Amazon. I don't know what the price of Echo is, but it's probably in the 20s.
Mm-hmm. No, it's really
And I must say that I'm glad you love Sacred Nile. I had to self-publish Sacred Nile. I cannot find any major publisher who published my other books would publish Sacred Nile, because the story is too positive and it's too revealing of the deceit and corruption in the Old and New Testaments in the Quran. Not trying to, but if you look at the book, I make no judgment. I'm just presenting stuff. But I had to self-publish it. But the Spirit made that possible, and that's why we have such a beautiful book.
yeah.
Now, sometimes you just have to step out on faith in yourself.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I mean, listen, it's informative. The conversation continues, guys. How can people reach out to you who have questions about what we've been able to discuss, a little bit of what we've been able to discuss? How can the people reach out to you?
Come to at my website, sacrednow.com. You can email me. I love emails. I love, to engage with people. So, please let me know how you feel. I think you may have some reactions to this interview, but I think that you'll probably have more reactions once you see the book and get a chance to spend some time with it. But then please email me what you're feeling, and I'll be more than happy to talk it through with you.
Yeah. No, beautiful. This has been an honor and super duper informative. I've learned a lot sitting here. I've learned a lot actually, even just going through the book. I encourage everybody again, buy the book, support. You will learn a lot through his journey. We've just only touched a teeny bit of what his story is and the work that he's been able to do through the Sacred Nile as well. So please support and appreciate you for being here, for making time for us. This has been an honor.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.